please click the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen. The icon is there. We will be posting archives of the recordings as well as related materials on our website within the next few days, so please look out for those. We'll also drop the link in the chat box. Your video and audio are turned off, but we are happy to invite you to use the Q&A button to ask presenters questions. It's easier for us to manage questions in the Q&A versus in the chat. So if you put them in there, we'll make sure that they get expressed to the presenter today. And we'll be having a brief Q&A at the end of the session. And then finally, we hope that you will respond to the email link with an evaluation survey. If you fill out the evaluation survey, it will provide you with your certificate of attendance. And really importantly to us, we always try to honor the comments of our community and make sure that we engage in a continuous improvement process. So any feedback that you shared will certainly get integrated into future planning. So I am so excited to welcome again Sabrina Vogler for her session, honoring our goodbyes as we say hello. If you were not in Sabrina's wonderful session yesterday, I will share a little bit about her. Sabrina Vogler is a certified professional coach, executive coach, and grief specialist in her online private practice at Heart in the Moment Mindfulness Coaching. Since beginning her career in 1995, she served as a licensed master social worker in hospice and other medical settings. She's a former student of mindfulness since 1999 and trained at UC San Diego Center for Mindfulness under Mindful Self-Compassion co-founders Dr. Chris Dermer and Dr. Kristen Neff. She is credentialed with Dr. Brene Brown's leadership company, Brave Leaders, Inc. She's also the mother of twin boys, an author, magazine contributor, teacher, guest lecturer, and consultant for mindfulness, self-compassion, grief, and leadership development. In her session yesterday, Sabrina shared her validation for our common experience and provided points of light and hope for us as we move forward. Today, she's expanding upon these concepts to bring us full circle and to bring our conference full circle. Our hope is that this session will provide us all with an intention that we can bring with us as we close out our conference and enter back into the world. So I will turn it over to you, Sabrina, and thank you so much for being with us. Oh, and you're muted.
Thank you so much, Susanna. I am truly just so honored, and honestly, I feel deeply joyful today as I join all of you. I was so struck yesterday in our session by truly the sense of our connectedness. Isn't it so interesting? Here we all are staring into our computer screens, and yet the resonance has been very moving for me of just sensing kind of the heartbeats behind your comments, and I am deeply grateful today. So now I'm going to share with you honoring our goodbyes as we say hello. Sounds paradoxical, doesn't it? So today I want to explore a number of paradoxes with you. As we look back to Susanna's point, this year has been quite a year. We talked yesterday about kind of the collective toll of the collective universal grief that the entire world has experienced this year in light of the profound changes that we've all been asked to navigate. And it is my intention today to offer you both a ritual and opportunity of sorts in which we might acknowledge our goodbyes, as well as provide for you a framework and a bit of a visioning tool for looking ahead. So I hope that you have packed paper and a pen, and if you haven't, please go ahead and get that out now. And we're going to be sharing a couple of tools in the chat box as well for you as guides as we move through our session today. So we spoke yesterday about the new world that many of us awakened to this past spring as changes that none of us really saw coming became our, in air quotes, new normal. And I put the new normal in air quotes because I don't know about you, but the idea of a normal that I personally would not have anticipated or planned for or necessarily desired is one in which it naturally brings within me a state of aversion, a state of, no, thank you, I don't ever want this to be my normal. And yesterday we spoke about the importance of, as we looked to each new day, really growing the courage and building the safety within through compassion to ourselves to be able to clearly see and honor and validate what it has been like to participate in a world that has a new normal, whether we would accept it or not. And so, from the balanced perspective that mindfulness brings to us, that allows us to see life as it is unfolding through our perspective, in the midst of our perceptions, to be able to see that in a way that does not minimize our experience, nor does it exaggerate our experience, but simply allowing our experience to be as it is, almost as though we were the sky observing the clouds. So to really get clear around the impact of what these changes have meant for me, for you, for all of us. And we spoke about a balanced approach, almost in the same way that a bird has two wings, in which this clear seeing informs for us a compassionate response. Just a kind of footnote, when we speak of compassion, we talk about the way in which we respond to times that are difficult, to moments that are stressful, and to respond in a way that sends relief, to respond in a way that addresses the unmet need that is below the surface anytime we find ourselves in a state of resisting. So this is about taking the time today to clearly see and name and honor both the goodbyes that we have witnessed this year, the world that is no longer ours that once was, as well as to create an opportunity within us to look ahead for what the hellos could look like in our future. So I want to start by really providing for you in a formal way the opportunity now to acknowledge that which feels lost to you, because what research teaches us is that the most resilient among us, the most transformed that we become in a state of adversity, is a result of being able to articulate, to put words around how we are feeling. So as we acknowledge what we've lost, it is very important that we first create within our bodies a state of centeredness, groundedness, and feelings of being supportive. And the reason why is because if you think about it, this human body of ours is always eavesdropping on anything happening in our lives, any thoughts, any emotions, any beliefs we have. The body is always eavesdropping, and the body will sense if we're in a state of stress or not. If we are in that state of stress, the body will say, well, then let me go ahead and give you some cortisol, some adrenaline that will help you to see better and to run faster. And while this may be elegant and adaptive in short bursts, I think I can speak for all of us that it's pretty draining and exhausting to live in a heightened state of survival all the time. So before we acknowledge and name and honor our goodbyes, I first would like to invite you to do several things. Number one, if we could first breathe in a way that is both deeply as well as lengthening our exhale. When you deepen your breath and when you lengthen your exhale, it awakens within your nervous system what's called a parasympathetic response, which basically just means this is the part of your body that relaxes you. So just that simple tool of deepening your breath and making your exhale longer than your inhale will automatically start to bring your body into a state of relaxation. Secondly, we might ground ourselves by noticing where this body of ours is making contact with a solid surface, like the chair on which we sit or the ground on which our feet rest, or perhaps awakening to your sensory experience, what you hear, what you see all around you. This is a profound way in which we stabilize our nervous system, in which we give ourselves a solid structure, if you will, a solid base that can support these deeper dives. So number one, we will deepen our breath and lengthen our exhale. Number two, we will ground ourselves by studying where your sit bones make contact with your seat. And lastly, as we spoke about yesterday, because you are a mammal, as am I, we can awaken within ourselves what scientists call the mammalian caregiving response by placing a hand or two on the heart or the belly, or perhaps crossing your arms gently in an intentional, kind way. This activates chemicals of care within your body that are deeply reassuring, as well as it releases a source of natural painkillers within your body. It also activates our immune system response that allows you to digest your food. It helps you to heal your wounds. So this is a win-win, right? So this is the physical state that I invite you to create within your body as we go into saying farewell. So we have our pen, we have our paper. Why don't you go ahead and join me as we're going to go ahead and place a hand on the heart and then take a couple of deep breaths if you wish. Slowing down your exhale. And then as you breathe deeply, as you slow the exhale, giving your body permission to sink down into the solid surface on which you are sitting, to notice the connection points between the sit bones and your seat. If your feet are on the floor, you might notice the border between your feet and the ground. Taking a deep breath in, and then imagining that you are sending your exhale down the body and down through your feet into the ground. Your exhale goes where it grows roots, deep down into the depths of the earth. And then as we deeply breathe, we might take a moment to notice the sensations of both the weight and the warmth of the hand as it makes contact with your heart. Remembering our intention to be present to ourselves in a compassionate way. And then dropping in within yourself and allowing yourself to lightly skim the top of the surface of naming something that has been lost this year for you. Now, permission to keep this as shallow of a dive as you need it to be, just touching it, just lightly summoning, but naming and honoring something which you have lost this year, allowing yourself this opportunity to be heard and to be validated. And then acknowledging in a kind way, like, yes, there it is. Or perhaps saying to yourself, yes, validating this loss. And then taking a moment to actually write it down, to just jot a few phrases down that might summarize that which you are honoring today as we say goodbye. Perhaps you may notice there's a quality of savoring. Perhaps you may notice there's a quality of sadness. Perhaps you may notice that there's not many emotions that could be named in this moment. Whatever this experience is like for you, giving yourself a chance to just honor it, to allow it, and to imagine that there is a profound support being provided to you right now in this moment. And I would invite you to take one more deep breath with me. And a nice long exhale. And then to recognize the paradoxes of goodbye. And how sometimes in life when we say goodbye, that goodbye is actually a two-sided coin. And upon giving ourselves the space and the opportunity, like we did just now, to really name and validate and recognize our goodbye, we might notice suddenly, we might see the coin in a new light, that perhaps there's a hello there as well. So I want to draw upon the profound wisdom of an Austrian psychiatrist and neurologist named Dr. Viktor Frankl. Some of you may be familiar with this incredible man. He and his family were interned at Auschwitz concentration camp. And Dr. Frankl lived to write several books about his experience. He contributed much to the world. So if anyone really understood the gravity of what it meant to live through changes that were unwelcome and to have to say goodbye to that which once was, it might be Dr. Frankl. And here is a perspective that he shares with us. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. I'll read that again. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. So, what does this mean for us on this day in October in 2020? Well, as we anticipate, as we think about what might we say hello to today, what might we welcome that could be lying ahead for us? My question for you is, could we look at this through the eyes of where do we have a choice? A choice that we might create for ourselves, a perspective that is fueled by that which matters the most to us. And could it be possible, like a set of automatic doors where when you step through the first automatic door, The second one naturally senses your presence and opens for you as well. That in this simple act of honoring our goodbyes, a new way, a new world, a new perspective, a new opportunity to make a choice, to create the conditions within us for a life-giving change could be presented. So I want to invite you today to imagine that you're sitting in this chair with me in this image, and that we're looking at the new horizon, and to really anticipate what could it be like this next upcoming year. And before we go into this activity, I would like to ask you this question. What is the difference between our expectations of this upcoming year versus what our intentions for this upcoming year might be? The difference between what our expectations may be for the year versus what our intentions might look like for the year. And then while you're pondering that, I'm going to drop a couple of dictionaries in your simmering mind. Excuse me, a couple of definitions from New Oxford Dictionary. The first definition from Oxford is a definition of the word expectation. The definition of an expectation is a belief that something will be the case in the future. An expectation is a belief that something will be the case in the future. Whereas Oxford tells us that an intention is a design that we might plan for as we look ahead. A thing, a design, something that we might plan for as we look ahead. So that's interesting, isn't it? I'm wondering if anything strikes you about these two words, and I'll give you a little bit of a hint. Notice that the word expectation begins with the letters EX. You and I might say, this is about that which is external to ourselves, something that I believe should happen in the future that is outside of what I really have power over. This idea that our expectations are externally based and may not be in the sphere of something that I can change. Okay, how about this idea? What if intention, which starts with the letters IN, is something that I could internally make choices about, something that I could internally work to create change around? That's interesting, isn't it? So, having kind of pondered this concept of our expectations for what lies ahead for us versus what our intentions might be, I want to tell you that there's an additional meaning to the word intention. And when I first uncovered this, I think I was a little bit blown away. Are you ready for this? This is the second definition, according to New Oxford Dictionary, of the word intention. It is defined as the healing process of a wound. The word intention is defined in the New Oxford Dictionary as the healing process of a wound. So now we introduce this idea that may appear quite radical. You and I could actually begin to heal the wounds within us by creating an intention, by naming an aspiration of what we would like to plan for in this next year. And that we might design these plans, we might welcome these new aspirations in our lives in a way that heals any woundedness within us. So here's one of my most favorite quotes by the poet Rumi. The wound is the place where the light enters you. The wound is the place where the light enters you. So could it be deeply paradoxical in nature that our time today of honoring our goodbyes and naming the wound, naming the toll that this has taken, the losses of this year, could create within us a place into which a crack, into which the light might stream, and that you and I could start to say hello to the healing power of this light by creating an intention of how we might construct our lives moving forward in a way that considers what matters the most right now. To me, to you, to your family, to our community. What matters the most right now? For those of you who joined me yesterday, you know that Dr. Warden's tasks of mourning lead us to this very question. After we've accepted that there is a new normal, after we have given ourselves the opportunity to start to feel our emotions in a way that heal them, we look ahead and we start to say, how will the new normal look? One in which I might choose to invest myself in a way that heals my wounds, that allows the light to stream in. So our activity today is one in which we are going to make contact with your future self, who is 1 year older than you are today. And we're going to ask ourselves, what would my future self thank me for? Some choices, some changes that I made this year that have allowed the light to stream in. Now, before we start to think about what would make us happy, what might bring us fulfillment, what might bring us joy, we have to address the elephant in the room, which Charlie Brown beautifully, eloquently expresses for us. I think I'm afraid to be happy because whenever I get too happy, something bad always happens. So good old Charlie Brown, what would we do without him, right? So Charlie Brown is actually expressing a powerful truth about humanity. And Dr. Brené Brown has researched this very concept for us. And what she shares with us is that feeling joy or giving ourselves an opportunity to think about what would inform our own well-being often evokes within us fear of loss. We anticipate losing that feeling of joy. We feel a sense of foreboding. We start to dress rehearse tragedy. This is just the nature of the brain. This is just the nature of what it is to be profoundly human. So I want to say to you today, as we start to move through this envisioning exercise, if you notice within yourself an objection that says, I can't even think about well-being right now, just honor that part of you. Allow that part of you to talk, and maybe just give a little smile and remember, yes, there is a profound vulnerability in allowing ourselves to imagine what we might say hello to, something that lights us up. But I'm not going to leave you with that, because Dr. Brown recognized that there is actually an antidote for this feeling of foreboding that we get when we start to think about what would cause us to feel more joyful or more happy. And you know what the antidote is? Gratitude. Gratitude practice anchors us in this moment and allows us to appreciate that which lights us up. So even though the brain is biased toward the negative, your brain is about 3.4 times more interested in negative emotions than it is in positive. And this is based on the work of Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, who is a positive psychologist. Even though your brain is like Velcro for negativity, and that's Dr. Rick Hansen who tells us that, we can give ourselves permission to allow the light to begin to stream in to our negativity, to our woundedness, and to ask ourselves this question: what matters the most? What am I grateful for? What is my future self grateful for 1 year from now, for the choices that I will make today about how I want to conduct my life? And that state of gratitude is profoundly protective. It brings us back to a place of open-heartedness and engagement. So if we could go ahead now and drop in the chat box, if it hasn't already been done, the list. I am offering you a 3-page list of core values. So let's just take a moment to give you a chance to click on that list. All right, so this list of core values is going to kind of cue you up and give you some food for thought today. So as you start to look through this list, and if for some reason you can't see the core values list in the chat box, you might start to ask yourself, what are my core values that mean the most to me? So I'm going to give you some examples. Perhaps a core value that means something to you is connection, or courage, or family. Perhaps it's friendships or hard work. Perhaps it's humor, or humility, or generosity, or service. Perhaps it's a love of being in nature. Perhaps it's a love of learning. Perhaps it's time spent in silence. Perhaps it's self-discipline. So just taking a moment to kind of scroll through this list of core values. And as you do so, just circling or jotting down on your paper any that really start to jump out at you, that resonate with you. So if you see one listed like social justice, or financial responsibility, or zest, or trust or truth, just circling or writing down whichever ones resonate with you the most. And as you do so, if we can take just a moment and kind of drop into this state where you imagine your future self, who is 1 year older than you, and imagine that your future self is thanking you today for core values that you have made front and center in your life. And that your future self is thanking you because these core values have caused your life to look differently. You've made different choices this year, this upcoming year. You've made changes in your life that allow you to take more time or to be shaped by these core values. So I'm going to stop talking for a little bit to give you a chance to look through this list, to imagine your future self as thanking you for whichever core values have shown up in this next upcoming year that you would like to make room for in your life. So again, just looking through this list and taking a final moment of naming which of the core values stand out to you the most, that your future self would thank you for, that you chose to really live according to in this next upcoming year. Okay, and then next, we learn through neuroscience that it can be incredibly powerful to tap into the power of visualization. This is called mental rehearsal. And so what we'd like to do now is we'd like to just take a moment to imagine yourself, and we are realists here. So this is to imagine yourself in the context of your life as it is, your family as it is, and to just give yourself a chance to imagine you in this very real image and how it's going to feel when you wake up in the morning and you give yourself a chance to come back to this state of what matters the most to me today. So just giving yourself a chance to visualize waking up in the morning in your very real life and imagine the gratitude that you might feel as you remember your core values, and that this next day is an opportunity to say hello to chances to really practice these core values. Now, as you're visualizing what it might feel like to wake up in the morning and to reconnect with these things that inform your internal compass, we might even say that these core values are going to make up your internal GPS navigating system for next year. As you anticipate how good this could feel, you may naturally feel objections coming up within you. If you do, that's because you're human. So we want to make space for the part of you that might be grieving, that might be sensing obstacles in your path, to accessing this life of your core values. If there is any grief, if there is any objection coming up within you, we want to honor this part of you that is speaking. We want to honor these objections. We want to honor this grief. What's showing up is the gap between our aspirations of how we'd like to live our life and what the reality could look like if we actually try to practice these changes in our life. So if this gap is creating, if you're noticing a disparity there, can we just take a moment to acknowledge and to support ourselves and to consider what the role of having compassion for yourself could look like? To take a moment to consider how self-compassion could play a role in helping you to live a life that dips into these core values. So perhaps self-compassion could give you courage to set a new limit. Maybe self-compassion could help you give yourself permission to access some self-care like you've never done before, or to connect with resources that you've been contemplating for a long time but just never accessed. Maybe self-compassion could simply help you to start to talk to yourself in a way that's similar to how you would talk to a dear friend. So just kind of adding to that image in your mind's eye of what this next year could look like, aligned with your deepest core values and with a compassionate friend in tow, that being your own inner ally. And recognizing that there's always plenty of sky for any clouds that come up. And now lastly, I want to go back to gratitude. Gratitude, again, from your future self, that you actually took the time today to sit through this presentation and to do this visioning exercise and to recognize that when we take time out for practices like this, we start to create within ourselves a form of a permission slip. And please look in your chat box because I am actually providing you a permission slip today. So go ahead and take your pen and your paper and either use mine as a template or create your own. But this is a chance for you to go back to the core values that really jumped out at you and pick one. So just pick one of the core values. I'm going to give you a minute to do that. You got one? Okay. So now we're going to write yourself a permission slip to do one tiny action step that will allow you to incorporate more of this core value in your life. So you can write your permission slip, and I'm giving you full authority to address the permission slip to you and to sign it from you. You are giving yourself permission to take one tiny action step that will advance your cause of living your life more aligned with this core value. If you're drawing a blank, let's say gratitude is a core value. You might say, each night I'm gonna allow myself to pick one thing I was really grateful for today. Or perhaps faith is one of your core values. So you might say, I'm going to provide myself more opportunities this upcoming year to really practice my faith in action. And this is how it might look. Or if spending time in nature is your core value, you might give yourself permission to go to whatever park is closest to your house once a month. Sneak away for 30 minutes on a Tuesday evening to find someone to provide coverage for you so you can sneak out even for a couple minutes and take a walk around the neighborhood, whatever it is. We are being realistic here. This is fully within the scope of how your life looks. This is permission to take an action step that will allow you to live according to this core value as we say hello. All right. So we began today by acknowledging, naming, and honoring a goodbye. We just kind of lightly touched into it. We created a state within ourselves first in which we were grounded with a deep breath, a lengthening exhale, and a hand on the heart. So we honored our goodbye, and then we discovered that there's often an opening that happens when we say goodbye that allows us to say a new hello. And we talked about how we might have expectations around the future, that are beliefs of what we would like to happen, that are external, outside of ourselves. We really have no control over these things. However, that we do have opportunities to make choices around our intentions, which could be something that we plan for. And then we talked about how intention can also mean to heal a wound. So this idea that as we moved forward into this visualizing 1 year from now, what will my future self be grateful for? That we are participating in our own healing process by allowing our wounds to be exposed to the light, by creating within ourselves the opportunities for small action steps via our permission slip that allow us to really start living within the realistic context of our own lives and according to that which means the most to us. And also recognizing that when in doubt, get grateful, because gratitude practice is profoundly protective. It allows us to be able to shift out of the vulnerability and fear that feeling good can create within us, and rather come back to the present moment experience of it, to open to that which we are grateful for, and to allow that light to start to heal our wounds. So I do want to allow for a couple minutes here at the end if anyone has any questions or comments that have been stirred up as a result of this time today. But more than anything, I want to thank you for joining me and bringing your willingness and bringing your courage to open to this idea of this new hello that is now before us. And then I'm going to welcome Susanna to come back on and join us again. Hi, Susanna.
Hello, Sabrina. Thank you so much for all you have shared. As I said yesterday, I think that sometimes there's a lot of silence around Q&A following a presentation like this, because these are such deep and profound concepts you have shared that take some time to process. So maybe I could just pose a question to you.
Sure.
Give people an opportunity to take a second and put their questions.
Yes, absolutely.
Q&A. So I think that, at least in my personal experience, I feel like intention around this and our emotional and physical bandwidth naturally waxes and wanes. What are some thoughts you have about the best way to sustain these practices over time, even when our motivation might be less than it is in this present moment?
Great question. So this idea of how do we make a life that is aligned with our deepest aspirations and core values sustainable? How do we actually go from today's visioning activity to really the day-to-day? How do we maintain this? How do we keep this up? And I would just kind of touch into this piece around motivation and how we motivate ourselves and offer some reflection around that from a perspective of self-compassion. There are two different ways that we can motivate ourselves. One is motivating ourselves in a spirit of what we call away energy, like I have to do this so I can get away from this negative possible outcome. So that might be, kind of trying to, the sticks and carrots approach to motivating ourselves, like, oh yeah, I have to do that thing so I can live my core value today. And it works great. Like it's probably gotten us all through a lot of really big deadlines. Like you have to do this or you're going to be in trouble, So this is kind of the spirit of away-based motivation. I have to get away from what could happen if I don't do this. Self-compassion offers us the opportunity to motivate ourselves in a way that is based on what we call toward energy. And what I mean by that is what would pull you like a magnet toward it? And what would it feel to operate in that state? Like when I wake up in the morning, I am so looking forward to how good it's going to feel to take a moment and drop into remembering my core values. So that is going to pull me in a way that I kind of can't even resist it. So this is a much lovelier state for our body to be in. And it creates lasting change in a way that is sustainable. And then the other piece that I would say to that is, if it's scheduled, it's way more likely to happen in our lives, right? So if we can find a place in our day when, okay, so I know that if I take the first three minutes when the alarm first goes off to do this, then every morning I will come to just anticipate the first 3 minutes are spent in this time of reflection, or the last 3 minutes before you go to bed, or whenever it is that you plug it into your day. If we plan for it, it's much more likely to happen. And again, with the spirit of lightness, with the spirit of kindness, with the spirit of ease, but that would kind of be my answer, is creating this state of I want to do this because it draws me rather than I have to do this because I should. And then also just actually planning for it, mapping it out in the day when it could fit.
Thank you so much. Something to aspire to. So I will say that although there are not questions that are popping up, there are many expressions of gratitude that are being shared in the Q&A and the chat. So I'll just read a couple of those because I think that what you've done is also facilitated kind of the sense of connection among all of us. So Sabrina, I could listen to you all day and so welcome your energy, so much gratitude to you. Having an understanding that it is okay to give permission to myself to feel and adjust. I do not have a question, but I would really like to take the time to say thank you.
Oh, thanks. Thanks so much.
So if it's all right with you, then maybe I'll transition to closing out our conference session.
Absolutely.
First, I would just like to thank you to say that what you have shared is enlightening and uplifting. I feel like what you've shared might sometimes help us survive, and at other times it might help us to flourish. And so wherever we are right now, what you've shared brings such value, and we thank you for that.
Thank you. It is my honor. Thanks so much.
I'll transition now into just closing out our conference as a whole because this is our last session of the day. So the first thing I will say is please remember to look out for those evaluation forms and just take a few minutes to provide us some feedback. It's so important to us. We love seeing positive comments. We really love seeing what we can improve upon so that we make sure that what we're sharing is relevant and meaningful to all of you. I have a few thank yous I would like to make. Of course, I would like to thank all of our terrific speakers from this entire session. Please go back and watch or rewatch sessions. If you attended or missed them, they will be posted in the next few days at the website that was posted. Thank you to the Skirball family and the Skirball Family Foundation for your generosity of spirit and kindness and support throughout these 4 years. Thank you to the Rochester Regional Centers for Autism Spectrum Disorder for support. Thank you to the Developmental and Behavioral Pediatrics Division for sharing your amazing speakers with us. That's where we're housed, and so we're always happy to provide this conference on behalf of DBP as well as our community partners. Thank you to our planning committee. Thank you to all of you attendees, our community. You provide inspiration and you are our partners in this work. And above all, thank you to Valerie Smith and Melissa Smith, the amazing co-chairs of this conference. This is their second year as co-chairs, and Valerie actually has been a co-chair for longer than that. You've seen them kind of in the background, but I really have to uplift them and explicitly thank them both for all the care, the attention, the collaboration and creativity that they have brought to this experience. And I really think this has been a conference that has reflected their intentions in that way. We hope that this session and the conference in general has provided you all with information and skills and intention and hope to bring with you as we enter into our day, into our interactions with each other, and that we can also turn inward to ourselves as well. So I will close by saying goodbye, as I also say hello, and wish you all health and peace as we move into the weekend. Be well.